Okay, now on with the show. Once again, I'd like to have Lee Carter zoom in to introduce several guest Rotarians as well as our guest speaker. So, Lee, the show is yours.
Well, first, I'm very happy to have Chaz Wilson here. Chaz is with the Rotary Club of Simi Valley and is our partner in the last two water projects. Chaz and I have gotten to know each other pretty well over the last 5 years, and we both were mentored by Heather Frankel, which was a wonderful person who really changed my Rotary life. I think that's all of my guests that are here today. So I'm going to introduce Wade. Wade Nomura is a charter member of the Rotary Club of Carpinteria Morning. He served as District 5240 Governor in 2011-12. He served for several years as a District 5240 Foundation in the 5240 Foundation Committee, and he's helped us achieve several of our global grants. Wade is the recipient of the Rotary International Service Above Self Award. He's been on over 50 Rotary trips internationally, including a national immunization day trip in India. Wade is incidentally a polio survivor. Wade is an honorary member of 6 international Rotary clubs in 3 different companies, and he helped charter 4 of them. He currently serves as one of only 24 cadre technical coordinators worldwide. In the last 10 years, Wade has presented to over 200,000 people in 15 countries. In his spare time, Wade serves as mayor of Carpinteria, California. He further serves on 8 boards, acting as president or chair of 6 of them. I met Wade early in my Rotary life while working on my first global grant. He was at our District 4160 conference, and he took time to sit me down and help me better understand the final details of Rotary project planning. Our water projects are better because of Wade's help. He's been a good friend to me, and we're very fortunate to have him today. I present Wade Nomura.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Lee. That was a good introduction. Appreciate it very much. And it's great to be here. Get to see a lot of you for a few times here, and I'm looking forward to being able to get back to seeing you actually in person. Right now, it's been a little tough, I know. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, and the presentation I'll be speaking on actually is in my role as the Rotary Foundation Coordinator. I'm actually a technical coordinator, and as Lee said, there are 24 of us, soon to be 27. We have 3 in each of the areas of focus from, okay, if we can go to the next slide, from peace and conflict building and prevention, disease prevention, water and sanitation, maternal health, basic education, literacy, community, economic development, and the newest one just came in, supporting the environment. There are 700 cadres throughout the world. In each of these, as I said, there are 3 technical coordinators. We serve a staggered 3-year term. We are appointed by the chairman of the board of trustees and are approved by the International Board of Directors to serve in this capacity. We have 6, making it 18. The other 2 areas of focus that are actually not areas of focus are financial oversight. We have 3 for that. We also have 3 in grant development. Our roles as cadres are to be project evaluators specifically. And what we do is we have to take a look at how projects are being developed, implemented, and also planned. So that's where we serve our role. Recently, I've served on the Long Range Planning Committee for technical coordinators and advisors. In that, we decided that it would be best to have all of the cadres now become certified to assist any club, district, zone, or country in developing a global grant. So we are now resources for the club. So if you have any problems, all you have to do is call for a cadre. We will start literally with the development and the writing of the grant all the way through, including the community assessments to the final planning stages for you. So there's 700 of us standing by to help you out in any of these areas. Next slide, please. I started doing water, and water was the first project I did. The first project I did was in Mexico. It's the importance of that, in my opinion, shadows all of the other areas of focus, because without water, you can't have any success anywhere else. The World Health Organization anticipates by the year 2025, as much as 50% of the world will be lacking safe water. Those that have water right now have to protect it. Those that don't have water will only be going backwards as population increases and we become less and less available to have that water. Next slide, please. The very first project I did was in Pátzcuaro in state of Michoacán. I did this probably about 15 years ago. I've been a cadre for the last 12 years, but doing the water project actually changed my life. That was one of the areas where I saw I could be of help. And it was that time that I actually experienced my first, quote, Rotary moment. That time where I realized how strong Rotary was and the ability it had to change lives. So I'm glad you guys are involved with the water, especially in Mexico area. It's one of the areas in dire need. Next slide, please. Through the technical coordinator position and being a Rotary Foundation cadre, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot of the world. This picture here was taken in Guatemala. As you can see, they lacked water there also. Most of the areas that I end up going to all have the same issues of lacking clean drinking water. This picture here was taken of a girl drinking from the water. Even though there was clean water nearby, she just jumped right into this one here, which was a circulating water, just basically just running water from the stream. So kind of question the health of the people right there in this area. Next slide, please. Some of the areas I've been to have been fairly remote. This picture here, again, it was a picture in Guatemala where I was taken up into the mountains. It took me 4.5, almost 5 hours to get to some of these project sites. So the areas I do get to see are pretty unique. You get to see a lot of the world through the project sites and through being a foundation coordinator. The other eye-opening issues are how people live in these different areas. And we have to realize, and this is something that it took me a little while to realize, is that when I visit a lot of these areas, a lot of these remote sites, I look at the needs that they have, the health conditions, the lack of water, lack of education, the lack of money. They just are very poor living. But when you look at them, most of the people, believe it or not, are actually pretty happy. They're used to this quality of life, this style of life. And so we have to be very cautious. When we request and ask for change, we have to realize that it's changing their lives on how we've seen an improved life, not on what they've seen. So we have to be aware that you have to be cautious. There's a cultural issue there. There's history involved with that when you do change, sometimes the changes aren't always accepted because you didn't take a look at what you had to replace that change with. Next slide, please. This project here was actually an agricultural project that I took a look at. The idea was that people in this area were suffering from malnutrition. They were malnutrition because they did not have the knowledge of how to develop and grow their own food. So they most of the time were starving, basically. So this Rotary Club in Canada brought forward a project to where they taught the people and gave the people the materials, the information, the education on how to grow their own food. It was enough for them to live off of, but also there was enough there for them to sell at the local markets. So it helped them out economically. Next picture, please. The success, as you can see, was very astounding. This lady here, believe it or not, she probably was only about 42 years old. She's of Mayan descent, and as you can see by the picture, she was well worn through the hard life that they had to live. They found that the people in this area were actually only attaining about 85% of their physical height because of this malnutrition. Also, it was unfortunate, but they also had the same amount of basically mental development. They figured that they were only achieving about 85% of their mental development because of the malnutrition. Next slide, please. When I went up to the mountain, this is what I was greeted with. A lot of people there were waiting for me. They had waited probably about 4 or 5 hours for me to come and talk about the project and the success that they had. They wanted to share that with us. These people of Mayan descent were dressed in their Sunday best. Next picture, please. And they're very eager to take a picture with me. at this site. And as you can see, and I do share this picture quite often, that's me in the middle there. I'm actually the tall guy in this group. So at 5'7", you can see you can see how much these poor people have had a rough time with their life with. Now, I talked about water being very important. So if you can go to the next slide. Even though we have the agricultural project developed to
Excelentísimas vistas, pero de primera.
Y Mítico también. Mítico tiene unas vistas preciosas. Solo que
Okay,
llevamos al cliente. Bueno, cada vez está más bonito ese lugar.
Skip, I don't know if you, or Ron, I don't know if you could mute some of this people.
Well,
There, thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
somebody out there has got their microphone unmuted, so please mute it because you're interrupting the presentation. I'm sorry,
Thank
Wade.
you
Go
very
ahead.
much. No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that. So this picture here actually shows one of the issues that I found. The same project that was addressing malnutrition. When I went to go see, I found out that they had not taken a look at the water situation there. One of the reasons why we do community assessments. This is the water source for 8 different families. And you can see there that that was basically what they had. So even though they addressed malnutrition, they did not address the water, meaning that no matter how much food they were to intake, most likely they were going to lose most of that because of dysentery. So that's why we recommend taking a look at it through a community assessment. This picture was in Guatemala again, and the idea in this picture here we took a look at is creating the ownership of the different groups, and your club has been great at doing that part of it. I present this throughout the world, and most people do not realize that the importance of actually being able to create the plans through the community to get that ownership in that one. Next slide, please. One of the project sites I went to had an issue where the groundwater had been grossly contaminated by agricultural growers. This was in a sugarcane area. The growers had actually contaminated the first aquifer, meaning that it was contaminated with fertilizer, insecticides, and a number of other things. And so we brought this awareness to the growers, and they actually went down and drilled another well down 700 feet to the second aquifer that was not contaminated. And they did that on their dollar because we showed them what had happened. And they figured that not only were they going to develop and help out the school, but they wanted to make sure this community thrived because this is where their labor force came from. Next slide, please. This picture is a picture that I take. I do evaluations and surveys of each and every area that I go to. What I find fascinating is that this does kind of uncover some of the issues that we have in some of these grants. For example, this grant here said that they had achieved 100%. Every person in the community had bought into the process. In other words, every person put money forward to make sure that they had safe drinking water. They participated financially in writing contracts and signing contracts for maintenance for water in that area. When I actually did the survey evaluation, I found out that it was less than 85%, not the 100%. As I walked through the villages, as I saw some needs, I go, well, how about that house off to the side? Did that one participate? They said, oh no, those people don't live here all the time. It's part-time. Well, how about that house over there? Oh no, it's too far away. We couldn't reach them, so we didn't want to pipe in water to them. Well, how about that one? They decided they didn't want to do it because it was too expensive for them. They could buy their own water for cheaper, so they did not participate either. So that's why it's important that we actually do these on-ground, in-person surveys to find out, in fact, if the written grant is actually true. Next picture, please. This picture here is taken in Honduras. I went up into the mountains of Honduras, and this gentleman here is a Rotarian. He's explaining what the process was, what the project was like. I put this in here because of a brief story that I did have with that one. Before I could speak, and they were all waiting for me to speak, to your right is a schoolroom. And they asked me to first step into the schoolroom before I could come out and speak to the people because there's people in there that I needed to meet. So I went inside the classroom, and inside were about half a dozen women working pretty hard at preparing a meal. They came over to me and they said, well, this is in honor of you since you had to come so far. I go, well, thank you, but you know, what is it? They said, well, we wanted to make you feel at home, so we actually are cooking for you chicken chow mein. So we had a little feast of chicken chow mein. I didn't want to tell them that I was Japanese and not Chinese, but the food was good. I enjoyed it. First thing I thought about was, well, where are they in the phase of water sanitation? So I looked at it, and they had actually completed the process. So I was fortunately able to eat it without getting sick. Along with some of the water projects, we include other ones. This one here, we went up to a very, very remote area in Honduras. And we went with a group of students that were dental students from the university. That was how we got our ride up to the top of the mountain. So we did an actual water analysis in that area, along with jointly doing a dental clinic. And it's the first time I ever got to see teeth pulled in mass quantities. Those guys are pulling teeth left and right, but it's part of the process. Next picture, please. This is what it's all about. We go to these different houses that didn't have water before, and we see the way they're handling water, how proud they are of having that good, safe drinking water, knowing that they're not going to have to worry about their health issues anymore. So this is the positive side. Next picture, please. This picture here shows, I'll show you what I actually have to do for work when I go to these different areas. This picture here is one of the areas where they had just done a drinking water project. We wanted to see if in fact the sustainability component was there and if the educational component was inclusive. As you could see, and this is me looking through the eyes as a advisor and coordinator, you can see that there's an eco stove in the back. The ceiling has been blackened because prior to that time, they were cooking under open fire. The floor you see is concreted rather than dirt. It's swept clean, actually was mopped. You could tell by having no dust anywhere in sight. The food has all been covered, waiting for us to eat. It's been prepared for us, cut, and you can see they're all fresh, locally grown. There's a nice chest in the background, safe drinking water. Whoops, we're jumping a little quick on that one. Thank you. So if you look at all of them, people are clean. There's a washing station for them. So we knew, in fact, that this was going to be a sustainable project. And we also, actually, I was also very cautious on this one because I had to eat the food that they were preparing. So it was an excellent meal. Next slide, please. This picture here shows a project that I was just recently at in Puerto Rico. Again, it was an agricultural project with the idea that they wanted to develop agriculture and self-sustaining lifestyle there. During the Hurricane Maria, they found that only 15% of the food was actually being produced in Puerto Rico. 85% was being imported in. So that became the importance of this project. These are small 12, 15 acre plots that were being taken care of by different families. Great project, by the way. And one of the reasons I wanted to share this with you is because this project here literally would change the lives and the lifestyles of those in Puerto Rico. I see this as going completely throughout the island rather than just small segments in the mountain areas. Next slide, please. One of the huge benefits of this project is what it has done for the people of Puerto Rico, the buy-in. I mean, I could not believe that. This lady here is an educator. She is actually teaching a class on nutrition, dietetics, and how to raise and grow crops. She came from Puerto Rico, was educated as a professor, and became a professor in the mainland United States. When the hurricane had struck, she decided to go back to Puerto Rico to help develop that island to make sure that people had what they needed. She taught the classes, and then on top of teaching the classes, she told me, she goes, we have mostly women coming into these classes because the men are all working. And it's the women that are the farmers in this area. Because of the project we've been doing, we have found that abuse of women had dropped by 50%, and that women now were being treated differently because they became the major breadwinners. They were making more money than the men that were working in the cities because of these farms that they had developed. So now it actually changed the lives of most of the women in these urban areas. Next picture, please. One thing fascinating about Puerto Rico, and I'll think about this, only 15% of the food was actually being grown there. They did not know how to prepare or eat the food that they're growing. So part of the education also includes sharing of recipes, how to cook and prepare foods, and doing this throughout not only the communities and the homes, but also in the restaurants. The gentleman with the bandana on is the caterer, and he also owns and runs a number of restaurants. His food all comes from these co-ops that you saw where they were growing the food. Next picture, please. There's going to be a brand new initiative. I'm letting you know this because you'll be actually one of the first in the Rotary world to hear about this one. The Rotary world has been divided into 7 different regions with one organizer in each of these 7 regions, with the idea that these will coordinate all of the coordinators, the advisors and the cadres in each of these programs throughout the world, with the idea now that we can reach into the different communities, clubs, districts, and zones more easily because we are regionalized. This is going to be rolled out here within the next few months. I've been, next slide, please. I've been selected to serve as the representative for all of North America, the Caribbean, and a portion of South America, the English-speaking Guyana being the country that I'll be in, South America. I will have 124 cadres underneath me that we will be coordinating. And the big advantage, and the reason I want to share this with you, is that the other regions that now we have identified, we can work directly with any hosting area or country in the world and have connections where a Rotary Foundation cadre or technical advisor could be helping the club that's writing or initiating the grant, along with the area, the host of the project itself. So we can coordinate at both ends to make sure that these projects become more efficient. Also, the idea is if we have cadres or experts, certified experts in global grants, it'll make it substantially easier to kind of overcome the obstacles as you've seen with global grants themselves. That is my presentation. So if there's any questions, I want to leave enough time for questions for you.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, raise your hand. And I'm going to start off, Wade. Excuse my, ignorance on this. Could you give me the definition of cadre?
Cadre is a volunteer technical advisor, usually Rotarians, that actually serve the Rotary Foundation. Most of our work is done, actually all of our work is done for free. So we will go everything from looking at a project and advising a club on the potential challenges you'll have with that project, all the way through to the final end, where I've actually evaluated projects that have been completed 4 and 5 years past, with the idea that we want to make sure that they're technically sustainable. Our role, actually, and our intent and goal is to make sure that each of these global grants achieve not only what they set out to, but possibly improving on that one. For example, the project that I looked at in Puerto Rico was for 50 different beneficiaries, and each of the 50 beneficiaries selected how they wanted to spend their money. Some went from irrigation all the way up to wires to keep out feral pigs. So they picked whatever they wanted to do in between, including buying crops, things like that, ice boxes, chests, things like that. But the big advantage of that project I see is that it could change the entire island of Puerto Rico, because they did such a good job of it that they could now educate other people, even in these urban areas, where they could start growing their own food, take a look at it. The restaurants now all are focused on trying to have homegrown vegetables and live produce there for the restaurants themselves to prepare the food rather than having it brought in. Again, remember, 85% was being brought in prior to this project. So it will change that island. Gary.
On that last slide, it showed the color coding on the geographic area. But the names, several people are doing Mexico and South America based on the specialty. So is there a person for each color-coded geography?
Yes, there is. For example, Mexico is Juliana Corredor Gonzalez, and she's from South America.
So she's the overall.
She will be the overall. And even though, that's a good question, Gary, even though I am a specialist in water and sanitation, if you go back to that list, you will find out that all of the areas of focus will have one representative. So I am the only one in water and sanitation in that area right now.
Okay.
So each of those, you can see the abbreviation to the
yes.
back. Yep, they were all different, and that's how we
Right.
set it up that way. So we would not have a replicating area of focus represented throughout the country or throughout the world.
Thank you.
Sure, you bet. Good question, Gary. Lee.
So I have a question, comment. In our last two water grants, because they were over a certain amount of money, we were required to have a cadre visit before we got the second half of our funding. And in both times, we were fortunate to have Edgar Christemos, who I guess you know, Wade. Anyhow, Edgar Keys was great. He came, he spent 3 days. He was able to look at our project, which I've always thought we have great projects, and he was able to make us improve it every time. And so there are certain conditions where our cadre has to be involved. And Wade, can you tell what kind of grant needs what kind of cadre review?
Sure, you bet. Thank you. Originally, the idea was, or the requirement was, if you requested more than $50,000 in World Fund money, you would have to have a cadre involved with that one. They started changing that to where the ceiling then went up even more. We became, $100,000. And then the next thing was we actually went backwards to where I started evaluating projects that were $35,000. I went all the way down to southern Chile to look at an ambulance project that was only a $35,000 project total. So they wanted to make sure that the sustainability was there. By the way, I did go because I was on a request from the board of, from the Rotary Foundation. The trustees wanted to see if in fact there was enough information and evidence to show that an ambulance project was sustainable. So that's why I was sent down for that one. By the way, the sustainability of an ambulance project, I went down there, took a look at it, I go, well, they've never allowed an ambulance project ever before that I could see because it's not sustainable. They have a certain shelf life quote for each of these ambulances mechanically. What I did find was that they had funded 2 ambulances in this area. They were reaching the end of their life. It was a 4-year project. They said, well, we've used up pretty much these vehicles. We expect there's another 4 or 5 years more, but we will have to replace these. So that's why the request. They said, we can't sustain what we have right now. I said, well, what would happen if the foundation says, no, we can't fund anymore. You'll have to come up with the funds yourself. Their answer was, we found out that we are now doing 100 times the amount of patients because of these ambulances. We can go out into the rural areas where we never had that availability before. They would always have to come in. We would end up having to purchase our own, which we would do. So there's a sustainability component. It actually became commercial to assisting these people in these rural areas. So that became a needs, and that's why we created the sustainability. Will it be done again? Probably not, but at least we did see that there's a sustainability component to that one. There's another one, I don't know if you heard, most likely you have. Chaz, I'm sure he's heard about it, but as of this year, they're actually cutting out the cash match for global grant projects. So it's roughly 20% of the money will be cut out of global grants. So you'll have to kind of address that way. There have been some pretty innovative ideas coming down because of this change. Some clubs are actually creating foundations. Some people are working with different foundations in both the international and in the hosting areas to see if in fact they can get matches for that one. Water projects, I don't know if you're aware of that, but funding is almost a 1-to-1 match. If you work with, and I hate to take our credit away, but if you work with a Rotary Club in Canada, the Canadian government actually funds on a matching basis water projects. So if you can get somebody there involved with it, you will have additional funding leverage there. Something to think about.
Anybody else? Lydia, unmute yourself. Unmute. Nope, don't hear you yet.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Wayne, I'd like to know if you have any experience with the wastewater treatment process here in San Miguel. The treatment plant was built about 17 years ago. Apparently it was over capacity at the time that it was built. And with all of the extreme amount of building that's been going on since then, clearly that's a big issue. Can you address that at all?
Actually, I can. This happens more often than not in just about every location that I've worked with and taken a look at these sanitation systems that have been put in place. They're pretty much overtaxed before they're put in. It's one of the challenges that we face. I recently went to a project evaluation in Ecuador, where in Ecuador, it was specific to a treatment system itself. They had the same issues, the same challenges. It was done on a small scale, actually in a school, a private school. And because of the success factor of that one, they were able to actually leverage that by using that model, and had the local municipality actually develop their own. So we created a twin of that one that worked and served in the rest of the community. Realizing that that was going to be short, they expanded the size of it slightly, and they were now able to actually support an entire community based on a model that was done in a school. So there are constant challenges, consistent challenges to that one. Just like the water situation, they're completely different no matter where you go geographically or in any given region.
Yes, but can you specifically address our situation here in San Miguel?
Not without seeing it. I'm sorry, I really can't. Okay. So I don't know what we have in resources, what you have available, how much is being overtaxed, whether or not you could isolate out communities, things like that, to tax on it less. Because if you could do small satellite ones around it, I don't know if that's what's feeding into the system. So I would have to see the overall.
Can anyone else in the Rotary tell me if this is something that the Rotary is working on, and who else I might be able to get in touch with to support those efforts?
That would be me. If you want to contact me, we can, but I do need to have the details. I can't help you without knowing what the specifics are to that project issue. Okay. And I do have, by the way, we do have 8 different experts right now in my department that have done very large projects, including in India, where they've done it for 250,000 people, developing a system like that.
Okay, so could your email address be put into the chat box so I can get in touch with you?
Yeah, or actually, if you contact anybody else, the whole club knows how to get a hold of me pretty much, except for you there. Sorry there. But Lee has my information also.
Lee who?
Carter.
Lee Carter.
Club.
Okay.
Sure.
Lee, can you post it in the chat box so I can pick it up there? Thanks.
Okay, very good. Anybody else have any other questions? Wade?
I
Yes?
have a comment about sanitation.
Sure.
Lee will know about this. We had a member who put forth a project for sanitation in Atotonilco because the church there has, what was it, Lee, 25 toilets? Yeah, 25 toilets, all dumping raw sewage into the Laja, which went into the Presa. We evaluated this over several months, and it was too big, too expensive, and it required federal support because the feds owed all the water. So we dropped the project.
That is one of the challenges. I've seen this throughout the world, actually, not just in Mexico, but throughout the world, where if you are doing sanitation projects, it requires a substantial amount of infrastructure being put in place. One of the challenges of that is that you need to, and you have to actually have the government included in this. Right now, I'm working on a Haiti task force where we have plans to actually bring water to the entire country of Haiti. This one here is going to be about a $250 million that we're going to start with, and we're going to probably end up being about a $12 billion project by the end. Rotary is looking at that one. We are actually working with the United Nations and a number of other organizations to put this in place. And we know for a fact that in order for us to be successful, we have to include the government. So again, in your case also, this addressing any sanitation system, and that one being put in place, or even if it's there, is going to require a substantial amount of coordination and cooperation with the local and federal government, because we don't have the funds, we don't have actually the permission to go in there and actually create infrastructure.
Wade, how are you navigating your way through the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's been a challenge. Actually, in the next 4 days, I actually have 3 presentations to different Rotary clubs around the country on what we're doing here in Carpinteria and how I'm handling it and facing it as a mayor of a municipality. It's been a challenge. I was telling one of my friends the other day that this is the longest I've ever had an opportunity to sleep in my own bed. 3 months. I've never been home for more than 3 months since I've joined Rotary. So it's good. The disadvantage is I got a lot of honeydew things that my wife is making me do at the house, but such is life. Could be worse.
Right. Anybody else have any comments, questions? Wade, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoyed the presentation. One last question: what has been your most rewarding experience?
My most rewarding experience probably is in Rotary. That was my quote Rotary moment. The picture I show you in Pátzcuaro. Up until that time, I was pretty much self-focused on trying to succeed myself. Had a successful business. I want to make it more successful. Bigger house, bigger cars, all of the above. When I went to Mexico and did that water project, I realized, wow, you know what? I'm not doing anything about leaving a legacy. So by doing a water project, by doing work for Rotary, and this is why I do it, I've seen how many lives I could change through this organization. And that's why I continue doing it. That one project there, I saw the eyes and the lives that were changed because of a little bit of work I did. As you all know, as Lee knows, when you do those projects and you see the gratitude of people that probably won't even remember you a couple of years down the road, but it doesn't really matter. They realize that their life's been changed because somebody was willing to put out a little bit of kindness to make a difference for them.
Wade, was that the Pátzcuaro Island District project?
That was one of them. Yeah, we actually did 3 there. One of them was on the island of Tecuena. The other one was in Colonial Miguel Hidalgo. And the third one was in, I don't even remember the name of that third town, but it was near no, it was near Zero N, someplace
Wasn't
there.
Pátzcuaro?
It was Pátzcuaro. Those are all municipalities of Pátzcuaro. Yeah.
Great city.
It is.
Very good. All right, Wade, thank you so much again. We really appreciate you being here. Lee, thank you for making all of that possible.